Ty Brady here with Brady Insurance Marketing in the Ty Brady Way. As a successful entrepreneur myself, I'm passionate in helping other entrepreneurs do the same as they rise from rags to riches and get inspired each week on the stories they tell here at the Ty Brady Way. Welcome back to another episode of the Ty Brady Way. Today I have McKay Allen on the show. And, him and I got talking because he comes from an environment of tech. And those of you who've ever listened to the show, I've made little tidbits and sounds about everything that I believe is going to data and texting. And he's actually been in that environment, and his story is fascinating on how he's gone from one niche to another niche and then found a specific niche and started to grow a company from there. So McKay, there we go. I'll get it right. Unless I'm screwing it up. So we're just screwing it up. But tell me, how did you even get into tech and then how you transitioned to where you're at?
Yeah. So I actually graduated from school in journalism. So journalism and political science was my background. So I was a TV news reporter for 4 years. I worked for Channel 4 here in Salt Lake City, worked up in Spokane, Washington as a news anchor. So I did that for 4 years. And that was the thing that teaches you is two things. Number one is you have to hit deadlines. Okay. You're going to be live on air at 5 o'clock, no matter what, no matter if people won't call you back, no matter if you really don't have a ton to say that day, you're live on air at 5. And so you've got to learn to make sure you have something, right? So there's no excuse. There's no we can call this guy back tomorrow. We'll wait for a call back. You've got to get the people you need on the phone that day, right?
Did you get to pick I didn't know. I love having people on the show because I learned stuff. Yeah. Did you get to pick your assignment?
So the way it works is, this is pretty standard at news stations. So I worked at the ABC station, Channel 4 here in Salt Lake, and then the ABC in Spokane, Washington. So the way it works is, as a reporter, you go in the morning, you have a morning meeting at 9 a.m., 8:30, whatever. And all the reporters are there along with the news director, who's the boss of the newsroom. And you basically pitch your stories. Hey, I've got ideas for these 3 things today. Okay. And the news director will basically either say, yeah, go do number 2 on your list, or, oh, all those suck. Here's better stuff. So you leave that meeting with your assignment for the day. And then you spend the day trying to get people to go on camera to talk about it, trying to talk to whoever cares about it a lot, trying to get both sides of the story. And then you present it live at 5, live at 6, usually put together an edited 90-second package for it, and then do a live intro and outro for the story. So yeah, that's how it's determined. Now, when you have crazy breaking news stuff, right, then that takes the show and consumes your show, and you get called out on that at 2 p.m. So you've done your story and you're back in the newsroom writing it, and you get called out to a fire or whatever. But it teaches you just the importance of deadline and the option of being oh, you hear this in business a lot. Well, you didn't call me back. I couldn't. I'll just wait till tomorrow. It's you can't wait till tomorrow. You're live at 5. You have 90 seconds you have to fill on that show. So there's no optionality to wait till the next day. So it was a good learning experience. Loved it.
For 4 years. Yeah. How did you transition from being a news anchor? What was next after that? So after journalism and what? You just hey, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life? I bet it's long hours. Long hours?
Not long hours, weird hours.
Oh, weird hours.
So you're working when everybody else is at home. That's kind of the point. So my hours ranged from, most of the time I was 9 p.m. to 6:30, somewhere in that range. But then I anchored the weekend shows for a couple of years. So I would work from 2 p.m. to 11:30, doing the sitting on the desk in the studio anchoring. And so I was working weekends. My wife was working at a bank, so she had banker's hours. So we never saw each other for a couple of years while I was doing that. And then I decided to leave for 2 reasons. Number one, I got really good at writing really quickly. So you have to just produce copy really fast, right? Because you're just hammering stuff. You might be sitting in a news van, writing a story, writing copy. So you've just got to write really quickly. So I was a good writer and could write really fast. And then the second thing is we see this, people don't get their news from broadcast news anymore, right? No. So I could sort of see that coming. This would have been 08 to 11. Okay. And this was starting. So you're starting to see markets where 40% of the people watched the news 20 years ago. Suddenly when I was in it, it was 5%. And it's still declining. And it's still declining. Yeah. So I could kind of see the writing on the wall. I was it's probably time to get the heck out of Dodge.
So you transitioned from that, was it from there right into tech?
Yeah, right into marketing. So I didn't necessarily set out to get into tech.
Okay.
I just started looking for like marketing jobs because I knew I was a really good writer. And I figured like, hey, companies need people who can write stuff. And so I just started looking around, found a content marketing job at a technology company.
Okay.
And ended up getting that job here in Utah, and started with them in 2011. So I started, and they happened to be a technology company. So
Okay.
that's how I got into it, and then grew from there.
Were you running like the PR for them, or were you writing like content or proposals? I mean, what did that entail?
Yeah. So the reason I was hired and what I started doing initially was writing copy for like the website, registration pages, landing pages, decks, white papers, ebooks, that kind of stuff is how I started.
Yeah.
And did the PR, of course, because that was really a good, transition. But then as the company grew, I started to manage a team, and then, eventually became head of marketing after 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
So that was a really awesome transition. And that company, when I started, we were pre-revenue, like we'd raised a little bit of money, and before we had sold anything, I started. And then when I left, like 5 years later, we were at $22 million or something like that a year. So it was a fun journey, and I got to see a lot of things to do correct with a startup.
Sure.
And a lot of things that, to avoid in future roles. So, but that was kind of where I cut my teeth and moved from just like, hey, I write stuff to actually running marketing department.
And so you go from, I mean, back to my original question on the show. Do you believe everything's going to who owns the data, right?
Yep.
Wins, and texting. Is that where everything's going? I mean, that's a belief I've had for a number of years, because you know your demographic, and I think any times you're going to a grocery store and they have you sign something, you're opting in to get text.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the data itself is really interesting. So that first company I was at, one of the things we did was we recorded and transcribed like phone conversations, and then we try to mine data out of those conversations. And so, yeah, like there's so much data on it. It's funny, like people say, oh, they're implanting chips in me, or all these conspiracies, right?
Yes, sir.
We literally carry the thing that tells everything about us with us all the time, right? Yes. We carry the phone with us. It knows what we say, knows what we buy, it knows what we search, it knows where we are.
Yes.
So there's data with you, about you at all times, that we're willingly providing to everybody that we interact with. So yes, I think the data piece is critical. On the texting component, like, and we can get into this in a second, but like, if you look at texting specifically, so 98% of all text messages are opened and read within 5 minutes. Compare that to email, where 25% might get opened on a good day,
or never get opened,
or never if it's cold, right?
Yeah.
And then voicemail or a phone call, where it's now down to less than 1% of the time you're actually going to answer a phone call that you don't know the number for.
Mm-hmm.
So texting is like by leaps and bounds, by multiples, the most effective way to communicate.
Well, I mean, I get tons of spam calls. In fact, I let it go to voicemail if I don't have their contact information. I will call them back if they leave me a message. Like I just got a call from my doctor, wants me to go get a glaucoma screening. So they called me up with a referral and said, hey, I need, come in and see me or whatever. But I didn't answer the initial call.
Yeah, exactly. No, people don't. People don't. But if your doctor would have texted you first, and been like, hey, can you call us back and we got to get this scheduled, you would have done it.
Oh yeah, I probably would have done it without listening to the voicemail.
And you would have clicked on the text instantly. So that's the difference. That first company, we didn't do anything texting. It was call recording, call analysis, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that was a smaller business, right? It's pre-revenue to 20 million. And then I moved on from there, went to a company that was a large multinational, like cybersecurity company. And that was a huge learning experience, going from a smaller organization to just like a massive multinational company that was doing $1 billion a year in revenue.
Yeah.
And huge differences in how those organizations operate and everything, but also just a different area of technology, right?
So you transitioned, I think, and if I missed something here, you transitioned from there, you went into helping car dealerships with texting. Is that right?
So I was at that big IT security company for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Learned a ton there, and then went into a business that basically provides texting solutions for dealerships.
Yeah.
So that was like a totally new world for me. Knew nothing about it at the time. But the idea was basically just, hey, look, dealerships are trying to get a hold of you. They're trying to clear their service base faster.
Yeah.
Right? Move things faster, get a hold of people on the sales floor faster. And so phone tag is the killer in those businesses. It really is. And so we went into a couple of markets that we felt like were underserved.
Yeah.
And started saying, hey, we'll enable your phone number to be texting. We charged them $300 or $400 a month to do that. And they logged into our software and could text their customers. Mm-hmm. And we built that business from 3 million to 50 million in about 3.5 years.
Wow.
So it was a fun journey.
I bought a car, and I usually get a text message, hey, your service is overdue.
Yep. Or
you have a recall. Or, hey, we've got a deal for you if you want to trade in your truck.
Right.
And I've read every single one of them. You talk about, I read them, I've never I mean, obviously I'm like, okay, my oil's due. Do I want to run it down there? Do I want to go to a local place or what is it, right?
Well, you know what was funny with that business though too is like, and we've talked about this prior to our discussion here, but like there were a couple of competitors in that space that were much larger.
Yes.
When we entered that space. And so we actually said, hey, look, they're serving car dealerships. This other business is serving car dealerships and bigger businesses. What's underserved? And so what we found initially was non-auto dealers. So we said power sports, marine, equipment dealers.
Okay.
There's like 50,000 of those locations in the U.S.
Well, and to think about that, you said service. They all you got to take those power. Like I have
taken them once a year at least.
Yeah.
You got to vote, right?
Yeah.
And so we entered those verticals because no one was there. Like that's part of the thing I learned from that company was like, don't be afraid to be second or third in a market. There's a lot of money to be made for the second or third place guy.
Sure.
There just is. There's a lot of money to be made there. And we found verticals that these bigger companies had just kind of ignored and passed off as like unsophisticated, not that cool. And so we started selling to trailer dealers and boat dealers and power sports guys and equipment dealers, mm-hmm. and grew that business basically with those verticals in mind. And then when we got big enough to like compete and go head to head, we started moving into automotive. But we sold $40 million of revenue per year into those smaller, less important non-auto verticals.
Well, the other company didn't necessarily go after.
They ignored it, completely ignored it. So we built really good partnerships and relationships in those industries and got the integrations with other technology partners. And that's how we got into the market and then dominated that market for a long time.
You talk about technology, and I have buddies that work in construction, and they're building these huge data centers.
Yeah.
And some of them are on hold right now, but that's, again, everything is going to that data. Where's that data? They got to build those big buildings and, big tech.
Yeah.
And to service and to warehouse, I mean, not the warehouse, but just the computer systems and how they have to keep them cold. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
So you go from that, learning the environment and went after smaller dealerships and power sports and so on. And then you're at a new startup. Which is this is what fascinated me when I started talking to you. I'm like, wow, that's so interesting. So
I had been running marketing departments at those 3 companies that I told you about, right? The startup I started with after TV, the bigger IT security company, and then this texting business. And so I'd been there for like 4 years. The thing that's interesting, I don't know how deep you want to go into this, Ty, but the thing that's fascinating with technology is every software company that you see out there is on a cycle to be bought or sold in like a 4 to 5 year window. That's the model. So someone starts a startup, they want to either get capital to invest in the business or sell the business within 4 or 5 years, mm-hmm. Or go public, right? And so that's where the M&A model in this whole environment, how it works. So every company's on these 4 to 5 year cycles. So if you're a leader in the technology space and software, you kind of want to move on every 4 to 5 years so you can maximize your income and also maximize your stock at these companies, right?
Yeah.
So, it was time to move on. We'd had a good acquisition and felt like it was time to move on. So, I got recruited by a great company that background wise, it was so interesting. Like the founders had started this company years ago, built it to a couple $1 million in revenue, and then kind of like got to the point where they had started some other stuff as well. It was taking their time, and they kind of had reached the max of what they knew how to grow it with a technology company. So they were like, hey, we're at a crossroads. Like, we either got to sell this or we've got to go hire a CEO who can run it.
Yeah.
And so they recruited me. I started with them in July of 24. So it's 7-8 months ago now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's what I've been doing ever since. And it's a fascinating business in a lot of ways.
You took a lot of your background over the things that you have done, right? But how did you find the niche? You went after, you said trampoline parks and the kind of similar to when you said, hey, we had another company that was going after the automotive industry really hard, car dealerships. We found a different niche and grew that. So how did you find the trampoline parks and
so
events?
It's so funny. So this business that we're at now, it's called Patch. Patchretention.com is the website. And they had built the business kind of to like serve e-commerce businesses and restaurant. Like they just weren't very clear on a vertical. So the things that we learned is, number one, you've got to choose an industry. You have to be specific and focused. Second thing is you've got to have partners in those industries. Otherwise, it's really hard to break in.
Sure.
So we just kind of sat down and said, okay, where do we have partners now? What are the industries that we feel like are underserved? So our initial goal, and I don't think I shared this with you, was we said, hey, look, there's probably some value in the health and wellness space. Yep. So like gyms, all the health spas you're seeing pop up, all those kind of places. And then attractions. So think everything from like water parks to trampoline parks. So we started down those two paths and said, let's see, we figured one would work.
Yeah.
So we started down both paths. And what we found in health and wellness was it was super crowded. Just a lot of competition there. A lot of partners that are very ingrained. And so we didn't see a real easy path there. And what's interesting, you've probably seen this, the market will tell you, you don't need to necessarily make all these crazy decisions. Like eventually water flows to the easiest place to flow, right?
Yes.
So our sales team that we had hired, I started to look at our demo numbers each week, and they were like doing one health and wellness demo and 30 demos with attractions.
Huh.
And I was like, why are you guys doing this? Like, well, it's easier. It's just like they are more receptive.
Yeah, they wanted to listen.
Yeah, they wanted to listen.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, I'm not going to push this other vertical if the sales team's telling me like they're harder to sell.
Sure.
And so we kind of doubled down in that vertical, and we found another that's sort of in the same space and got partners and have just been rolling the last 7-8 months. So, but it's funny because these are verticals that no one paid attention to, no one wanted. And this isn't necessarily about those verticals. It's just, I do think you have to be focused, and then you have to find a place that no one else seems to really be paying attention to.
So did you just sit down and brainstorm with your team saying, hey, who are we selling to now?
Yeah.
Because I heard you say you started out with, they were catering to like restaurants and e-commerce. So you said, okay, you said, you look at the data, it's going to tell you. So you just said, okay, what's the data telling us? And then you went all in.
Exactly. So one thing I learned, and this is one of the benefits of working at that big company, right? They hired, they were big. We had 2,500 employees, and they would hire big consulting groups to come in and give us guidance on things. And I'd say 8 times out of 10, those consulting groups were just wrong. And if we would have just like gone a certain direction, we would have made quicker decisions, either fail or succeed.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's what we said. And I learned this at my other company I mentioned, but you just kind of have to choose. So we just sat down and said, hey, these two verticals seem cool.
Mm-hmm.
They seem large, like they're big. You got to do some research. Like, hey, there's 30,000 potential rooftops over here and 20,000 over here. That's big. Let's start there.
Yeah.
And then the market will tell us what's best. And that's exactly what happened. So you do have to do a little bit of research up front, but I think sometimes people overanalyze and don't just go down the path.
Yeah.
And so we would have probably done, okay, we're going to do some analysis on this and figure it out, and probably ended up in something else. But we just said, hey, let's choose these two verticals, and the market will tell us which one's good. And that's exactly what happened.
Does it seem like there's more and more attractions popping up or being built? I mean, it seems like for me, my kids love that kind of stuff, whether it be, you're talking paintball, trampoline park, racetrack.
Yeah.
You know that better than I do. I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, so what we're seeing, and we're new to the space, right? So there's people that are way more expert on this than me, but there's two things that are happening. The first is the revenue for those businesses is the top line is very like more significant than people would think. So like your average like trampoline park or whatever is going to make $3 to $4 million top line revenue.
Yeah, that shocked me when you said that. I was like, I had no idea.
It's wild.
Yes.
So you've got people that are just opening these franchises and are making 12 million top line a year with 4 locations open.
Ooh.
It's bonkers. Now they've got some overhead. There's capital. It's capital intensive to build, right? And then you've got to have a whole bunch of liability insurance. Yeah. Because you're gonna have a broken femur in there every once in a while. But like the other thing that's interesting with it is we saw just this week, Joann's Fabrics, that whole retail chain is closing. Yes. They declared bankruptcy. So there's like 700 retail locations that are now just going to be empty. Yeah. Well, guess who's going to buy a lot of those? Trampoline parks.
Ninja parks. Yeah, whatever they call them.
The arcade movie theater type places. Like that's who, if you go and look around strip malls that 15, 20 years ago had retail, they've now got a lot of attractions in them. We see it out where we live, near where we live, right? Like there used to be or maybe it was a Joann's, but something like that. There's now a Ninja Kids in that place. Yes. So you're seeing that all the time. So I think there's a few factors, right? I think you're seeing as expenses have gone up and inflation has risen, and that's not going to go down anytime soon, it looks like. You're seeing people say, look, I can't afford like Disneyland for 3 days, but I can go take my kid to a trampoline park for a day. Yeah. Right? That's $40. I can do that. So that's, I think, part of it too. But the retail, that, and then just the amount of them that are popping up because people see the revenue that's in them, I think is sparking the growth. Well,
and I took my kids, 10 days ago. They're like, hey, Dad, I want to go to the trampoline park. They're out of school. Yeah. It was packed.
Crazy, right?
And I was,
there's demand.
It was, I was just packed. And I was like, and for an all day event or pass or whatever, I think it's $40 and, give them some money for some pizza. And they had a heyday.
Right. Yeah.
Except for my kid lost his $300 ear pods. Yeah, in the foam pit. Yeah, and they're like, "Oh, you're not getting those back."
No, it's crazy. But what's funny is like we see those businesses, and I would just say this of all small businesses, right, that are brick and mortar locations. Big software companies don't want to sell. They'd rather do a big $100,000 a year transaction and sell software to other big companies. Right? So like they don't want to do the work of like hitting singles all day. So our sales team's selling $400 a month deals all day, every day. And we're selling to these individual locations and these specific verticals and it's working well.
So this is the two things. So with all that, what would you say some of the, people what were the failures or the hard things, right? Because we've talked about all the successes, but what are some of the failures or what life lessons have you learned through that?
So I'll give you a few starting chronologically. Yeah. So when I was in TV, TV reporters don't make very much money. People think they do, but they don't. Now, if you get to like the big national folks or the big networks, they do. But like your local TV reporter is making sub $100,000 a year, and they're like starting markets. Like Spokane's not a big market; it's like market 60. And you're paid kind of based on how big the market you work in is. So like Salt Lake City's 30, New York's number 1. It's just based on market size. So, I had a friend who couldn't get a job. I graduated in 08 at the height of the recession, right? I had a buddy who couldn't get a job and was working at Jack in the Box. He couldn't get a job in his field, so he's like, I'll just go get a job at Jack in the Box. Wow. He was making more than I was as a reporter. Okay. And so you start to realize, like, so the first lesson is you've got to find something, not that you just enjoy, but that actually like is lucrative. Okay. It's really hard to enjoy life for 40 years in something that you enjoy, but doesn't pay well at all. So you've got to find something that is lucrative enough to make you satisfied, right? Good. So that was the first thing. Second thing I learned was you have to be willing to switch careers. So like that had been my dream to do that for a long time. And it was hard to realize, like, I got to get out of this. This is not going to work. And so you've got to be willing to like pull the ripcord and make a pivot. And then the other thing I learned from these various tech companies is, lots, but kind of like we've been talking about, is you just find your niche. Like, it's okay to be second place in a space. Like, some people I think get so obsessed with being number one that they forget, like, there's a lot of money. Let someone else take the arrows of charging through first. Like, you come through second, you can do really well.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, something I learned through various experiences.
I have lots of second and third place trophies back there, and I have some number ones too, right? Yeah. But those are some wow.
But I think sometimes people get intimidated though. They think, oh, well, I can't go and start this or do this because these 3 people are already there doing that.
Sure.
And they're big and they're intimidating. And it's like, great. There's plenty of room.
I look at, I've said this too, is Amazon, it was like Sears, Roebuck back in the day when everyone was ordering from a catalog. Yeah. It was mailed to their house. And so it's the same thing, but now it's transitioned to online.
Right.
And then somebody and look at all the failures he had to get to where he was at, and look at what everybody knows that.
Right.
100%. Like, he could have given up and said, sorry, I'm going to start out with books. Right. And now it's this big, huge, well-known brand that's across the world, and it's powerful. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you even look at like Chick-fil-A is another really good example where KFC really owned that like market for a long time. Mm-hmm. And when we were kids, it was KFC.
That's right.
Right. You went to KFC, and now like we go to Chick-fil-A quite a bit. Yeah. I don't remember the last time I went to KFC. No offense, KFC, but I think it could have been intimidating for a company like that who was just kind of in the South, pretty local, to be like, can't expand. There's much larger companies out there doing this.
Well, and when I was a kid, you talk about Chick-fil-A, it was only in malls.
Right, exactly.
It wasn't even...
It was malls and airports.
Yeah, it wasn't even in the same thing with like Panda Express. That was traditionally in those spaces, and then they've done
like food courts.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So that was, I think, a good learning was when I was at that texting company, there's massive companies in that space, and it would have been really easy for the founders of that business to be like, we can't go there. It's too big. But they found a niche, and it worked.
Those last 2 questions.
Yep.
Where do you see it going the next 5 years? And any last thoughts?
So I think here's 2 things. The first is, I think you're going to have a continued focus on instant communication. And I do think texting is a huge part of that.
Okay.
Businesses are just desperate to reach us. And so email and phone calls don't work anymore. So I do think the majority of businesses are going to start relying on texting even more than they do. We saw that at my last company where when I first started there in 2020, we had to kind of educate them on what this was. Mm-hmm. Now everybody knows what it is. It's just a question of who are you using.
Yes.
And that's in 5 years, right? So that's the first thing. Second thing is I do think the data piece is so interesting. Like, there's just so much data on us today that companies are wanting to serve up like a very specific experience. Like, they're going to serve you ads and experiences based off your preferences, your search habits, everything you do, everywhere you go. That's just the reality, unless you want to ditch your phone.
Yeah.
Which nobody does.
Yeah.
So that's the reality. And then I think the last thing I would just say is, maybe I'd reiterate what I said earlier. You can't be afraid to pivot, right? Whether it's to a different vertical, whether it's to like, hey, I'm in the wrong career.
Yeah.
I'm doing the wrong thing. I've got to make a change. Like, I always kind of think through things like, what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
And in reality, you'll be fine. Like, you just have to sometimes make a bold decision. That's really hard in the moment, but afterwards, you rarely regret those.
I'm going to add one thing to that. It could be forced, or it could be you choose it.
Great point.
The career I'm in now, it was forced.
Yeah.
And the worst and best thing, and to this day that's ever happened, is it was forced. Someone pulled the rug out from underneath me, and it was over.
And you had to move to a different thing.
Yep. And it was not easy.
Yeah.
But it was well worth it, and it put me where I'm on the path I'm at today to do this. And it's been wonderful. As always, share, like, and subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Ty Brady Way. As always, share, like, and subscribe. Go to Instagram at ty.r.brady. And as always, love hearing from you. And let me know what you want to learn on the show or what you'd like me to bring up on the show. Thanks.
You can find the Ty Brady Way on Instagram as well as Facebook. To stay connected with giveaways and Ty himself, go ahead and follow at ty.r.brady on Instagram as well as Facebook. This podcast was recorded, edited, and produced by Whitney Face Media Marketing. The theme music is an excerpt from Hot Chicken of the Woods by Isaac Joel.